There is a silent tragedy unfolding in millions of lives at this very moment. A tragedy that rarely makes headlines. A tragedy that leaves no visible scars. Yet it quietly steals potential, confidence, peace of mind, and entire futures. Not because people are working too little. Not because they lack talent. Not because they aren't intelligent enough to succeed. And not because they were destined to fail. The real reason is far more subtle. They continue investing the most valuable currency they possess into people who never intended to value it in the first place. Time. Not money, because money can be earned again. Not status, because status can disappear overnight. Not attention, because attention constantly shifts from one thing to another. Time. The one resource that never returns once it has been spent. The one investment that offers no refunds. The one gift every human receives in equal measure, yet spends so differently. Every minute you spend trying to convince someone to appreciate your worth. Every conversation where you're forced to explain why you deserve basic respect. Every hour you waste chasing people who only remember your existence when they need something from you. Every day you sacrifice your peace just to remain part of someone else's life. Every month, you continue hoping someone will finally become the person they've repeatedly shown they are not. Every year you remain emotionally attached to relationships that constantly drain your energy instead of restoring it. Is another year quietly stolen from the person you could have become? While you're fighting for a place in someone else's life, your own life is standing still. While you're trying to earn validation from people who never planned to give it, your dreams continue waiting. Your potential continues waiting. Your future continues waiting. And the frightening part? Most people never realize they're making this trade. They believe they're simply being loyal. They believe they're being patient. They believe that if they just try a little harder, love a little more, give a little more, sacrifice a little more, eventually everything will change. But some investments never produce a return. Some doors never open, no matter how long you stand outside knocking. Some people only take because they were never interested in giving. The tragedy isn't simply losing time. The tragedy is losing pieces of yourself while trying to hold on to people who were never holding on to you. Tonight, you're going to understand why some of the strongest, wisest, and most disciplined people throughout history embraced one brutal truth that completely transformed the way they lived. A truth that protects your peace. A truth that protects your future. A truth that protects your time. Not everyone deserves access to you. Imagine walking into a bank. You walk calmly toward the counter carrying everything you've worked for. Years of sacrifice. Years of discipline. Years of saving. Your entire life savings rests in your hands. Then, without hesitation, you place it on the counter. A complete stranger walks through the front door. You don't ask who they are. You don't ask where they came from. You don't ask whether they've ever earned your trust. You don't ask if they'll protect what you've spent a lifetime building. Instead, you simply hand it over. No questions. No background check. No reason. You just hope they'll take care of it. It sounds completely ridiculous. No rational person would ever do something like that. The risk is obvious. The outcome is almost guaranteed. Everything you've built could disappear in a single careless decision. Yet emotionally, that is exactly how millions of people choose to live every single day. They hand out their time, their loyalty, their kindness, their emotional energy, their attention, their patience, their forgiveness, to people who have done absolutely nothing to earn any of it. People who only call when they need something. People who disappear when you need them most. People who take your presence for granted because you've made it available without limits. And somehow, this behavior becomes normal. Because somewhere along the way, many people were taught a dangerous lesson. They confused being a good person with making themselves endlessly available to everyone. They believed saying no was selfish. They believed protecting their peace was rude. They believed setting boundaries meant they didn't care enough. So they kept giving. They gave even when they were exhausted. They gave even when they weren't appreciated. They gave even when every act of kindness was met with more expectation instead of gratitude. Eventually, they stopped asking a simple but life-changing question. Has this person actually earned access to my time? Because kindness without wisdom becomes exploitation. Generosity without boundaries becomes exhaustion. Compassion without discernment becomes self-abandonment. Availability is not the same as kindness. In many cases, it is self-neglect disguised as compassion. It looks noble from the outside. It feels generous in the moment. But beneath the surface, it slowly teaches people that your time has no value and your energy has no limits. The more you ignore your own needs, the easier it becomes for others to ignore them too. And until you truly understand this, you will continue giving away pieces of your life, one conversation at a time, one unnecessary sacrifice at a time, one disappointing relationship at a time, to people who leave you feeling emptier after every interaction than you did before it began. Because the greatest theft is not always someone taking your money. Sometimes, the greatest theft is allowing people to repeatedly take parts of your life that you can never get back. Chapter 1. The most expensive thing you own. People spend their entire lives believing that money is the greatest resource they possess. They're wrong. Money is valuable. It gives you opportunities. It buys comfort. It creates options. But no matter how important it may seem, it is not the most valuable thing you own. Because money can always be earned again. A fortune can disappear and be rebuilt through patience and persistence. A business can collapse, only to rise stronger than before. A career can be restarted. A house can burn to the ground and eventually be replaced. Even a damaged reputation, given enough time and consistent action, can be restored. Human beings have an incredible ability to recover from material loss. History is filled with people who lost everything, only to build something even greater. But there is one thing that follows a completely different rule. One thing that offers no second chances. One thing that leaves forever the moment it passes. Time. The most expensive possession you will ever own. The one resource that is silently disappearing every second, whether you notice it or not. You cannot store it. You cannot borrow more of it. You cannot negotiate for extra years. And once a single moment has passed, it belongs to history forever. Think about it. Every conversation you sat through, even though you knew it was draining your spirit. Every argument that accomplished absolutely nothing except stealing your peace. Every apology you offered to people who never appreciated your sincerity. Every opportunity you postponed because someone else's opinion mattered more than your own dreams. Every night you stayed awake wondering why you weren't enough for someone who never truly valued you. None of those moments are coming back. They're gone. Not tomorrow. Not next year. Forever. No billionaire can write a check large enough to buy back yesterday. No scientist can invent another yesterday. No genius, no matter how brilliant, can create one extra minute after it has already disappeared. No miracle can restore the hours you willingly surrendered to people who never deserved them. And yet, this is exactly how millions of people choose to spend their lives. They spend years chasing approval from individuals who have already shown, through their actions, that they simply do not care. They replay old conversations in their minds, searching for words they should have said. They analyze unanswered messages as though hidden meaning exists in silence. They obsess over people who barely think about them. They sacrifice their own peace just to keep someone else comfortable. They shrink themselves to avoid disappointing others. They abandon their own priorities to become available whenever someone else calls. Little by little, without realizing it, their most precious resource continues slipping away, not in dramatic moments, but in ordinary days that quietly become ordinary years. Days filled with waiting, hoping, explaining, chasing, overthinking, trying to earn a place in the lives of people who have never truly valued their presence. Until one day they look back and wonder where all the time went. Because time never announces its departure. It simply leaves, silently, relentlessly, without permission. And perhaps the most painful realization of all is that the greatest thieves in your life rarely arrive wearing masks. They don't always look like enemies. They don't always come with obvious bad intentions. Sometimes they smile. Sometimes they call themselves friends. Sometimes they're people you've known for years. Sometimes they're the very people you kept making excuses for. The greatest thieves rarely force their way into your life. They simply remain there, long after they've stopped adding value. And if you're not careful, the people who feel the most familiar can become the ones who quietly steal the most irreplaceable thing you will ever own. Your time. Chapter 2. Why we chase people who don't value us. At first, it feels personal. You tell yourself you're too emotional, too sensitive, too attached. You wonder why you can't simply let go. Why one person's silence keeps echoing through your mind. Why one cold response ruins an otherwise good day. Why you keep thinking about someone who barely seems to think about you. But the truth is, this isn't weakness. It isn't proof that you're broken. It's psychology. Human beings are wired to crave acceptance. Long before cities existed, long before technology, long before modern civilization, our ancestors survived in tribes. Belonging wasn't just comforting. It was necessary. Being accepted meant protection. It meant food. It meant safety. It meant another chance to see tomorrow. Being rejected could mean isolation, and isolation often meant death. For thousands of years, your brain adapted to this reality. It learned to treat rejection as a serious threat, not because it wanted to make life difficult, but because it wanted to keep you alive. Even today, that ancient survival system still exists inside you. The world has changed, but your brain still carries echoes of a much older world. That's why one person's cold behavior can occupy your thoughts for weeks. Why one unanswered message feels heavier than 20 thoughtful conversations. Why a single criticism often lingers longer than countless compliments. And why you sometimes find yourself trying harder for people who barely acknowledge your existence. From the outside, it seems irrational. From the brain's perspective, it's an attempt to solve what feels incomplete. Your mind mistakes emotional uncertainty for unfinished business. It keeps searching for closure. It keeps asking questions. What did I do wrong? Could I have said something different? Maybe if I explain myself one more time. Maybe if I become more patient. Maybe if I love them harder. Everything will finally make sense. But uncertainty has a powerful effect on the human mind. The less predictable someone becomes, the more attention your brain gives them. Because unpredictability creates anticipation. Your mind starts waiting for the next emotional signal, the next message, the next compliment, the next apology, the next moment of affection, the next sign that maybe, this time, they finally care. This is one of the reasons toxic relationships feel so addictive. Not because they're healthy, not because they're fulfilling, but because inconsistency creates obsession. When affection is given one day and withdrawn the next, your brain begins chasing the reward instead of questioning the relationship. You stop asking whether the connection is good for you. You become consumed with wondering when the next moment of validation will arrive. Without realizing it, your emotional energy becomes trapped inside a cycle you never intended to enter. You wait. You hope. You overanalyze. You make excuses. You forgive things you once promised yourself you never would. All because your brain keeps believing the next reward is just around the corner. Meanwhile, life quietly continues moving forward. Opportunities pass. New relationships never begin. Personal goals are postponed. Your confidence slowly erodes. And your future waits, while your attention remains fixed on someone who has already moved on emotionally. The cruelest part isn't that they stopped choosing you. It's that you stopped choosing yourself. You placed your life on hold, waiting for people who were never waiting for you. Chapter 3. The hidden cost of staying. Most people measure relationships by memories. They look back at the good times, the laughter, the shared experiences, the promises that were made, the moments that once felt unforgettable. They convince themselves that because something was once beautiful, it must still be worth holding on to. But wise people measure relationships differently. They don't judge them only by where they've been. They judge them by where they're leading. Because the past can create nostalgia, but only the present reveals the truth. So ask yourself one simple question. Who do you become after spending time with this person? Not who they say you are. Not who you hope they'll become. Who do you actually become? Do you leave their presence feeling inspired or emotionally exhausted? Do you walk away feeling lighter or carrying a weight you didn't have before? Do you feel genuinely understood? Or do you constantly find yourself explaining your intentions, defending your choices, and proving your worth? Do they celebrate your growth? Or do they become strangely uncomfortable every time you improve? Do they encourage your ambition? Or subtly remind you to stay where you've always been? Because not everyone who smiles at your success is happy to see you succeed. Some people don't hate you. They simply preferred the version of you that asked for less. The version that apologized even when it wasn't necessary. The version that never challenged them. The version that stayed quiet to keep the peace. The version that accepted disrespect without speaking up. The version that made their life easier, even when it made yours harder. Growth changes people. It changes priorities. It changes standards. It changes the conversations you're willing to have and the behavior you're willing to tolerate. And when you grow, your relationships are forced to change as well. Some people will celebrate that transformation. They'll grow alongside you. They'll encourage you to become even better. Others, will quietly resist it. Not because your growth is wrong, but because it reminds them that they've chosen not to grow themselves. Your confidence exposes their insecurity. Your boundaries challenge their expectations. Your self-respect removes the control they once had over you. And suddenly, the relationship begins to feel different. Not because you've become difficult, but because you've stopped accepting what once kept you small. The painful truth is this: not everyone is willing to grow with you. Some people only know how to love the version of you that was easier to control. And when that version disappears, so does the relationship. Sometimes, the hardest goodbye isn't losing someone. It's losing the illusion of who you believe they were. It's realizing that the person you kept fighting for existed more in your hopes than in reality. It's accepting that you've been loving potential instead of truth. That illusion is incredibly powerful. It convinces people to stay long after the relationship has stopped bringing them peace. It whispers, maybe things will go back to how they were. It says, just give them one more chance. It promises that if you're patient enough, everything will eventually change. So they keep hoping. They keep waiting. They keep explaining. They keep forgiving. They keep sacrificing. And without realizing it, they repeat the same cycle again and again. Months become years. Years become decades. Until one ordinary day, they look back with a heavy heart. Not because they loved too deeply, but because they spent half their life trying to rescue relationships that were quietly falling apart from the very beginning. Some relationships are lessons. Some are seasons. And some are meant to end, not because you failed, but because your future can no longer fit inside your past. Chapter 4. Stop chasing. Start choosing. There comes a defining moment in every strong person's life. A moment that doesn't always arrive with celebration. It often comes after disappointment, after betrayal, after countless sleepless nights, after giving more than they had left to give. It arrives quietly, as a realization that changes the way they see themselves and the way they see everyone around them. They stop asking, why don't they value me? They stop searching for explanations that never come. They stop trying to decode silence. They stop chasing people who have already answered through their actions. Instead, they begin asking a far more powerful question. Why am I giving value to people who haven't earned it? That single question changes everything. Because the moment you ask it honestly, your focus shifts. You stop obsessing over whether someone chooses you, and you begin paying attention to whether you're choosing the right people. That is where real freedom begins. Because your attention is never neutral. It is a vote. A vote you cast every single day. Every text you send. Every call you answer. Every invitation you accept. Every favor you agree to. Every conversation you continue long after it has stopped bringing you peace. Every emotional investment you make is shaping the future version of yourself. You become whatever consistently receives your time. If your attention constantly feeds drama, your life begins to feel chaotic. If your energy is always spent chasing approval, your confidence slowly depends on other people. If your time is invested in people who drain you, you eventually wake up emotionally exhausted without understanding why. Your life follows your attention, which is why successful people aren't simply productive. They're selective. They understand that every yes carries a hidden cost. Because every time you say yes to something, you're automatically saying no to something else. Say yes to endless distractions, and you say no to meaningful progress. Say yes to relationships that constantly exhaust you, and you say no to your own peace. Say yes to people who only appear when they need something, and you quietly say no to the people who genuinely value your presence. The strongest people understand this trait. They know that protecting their time isn't selfish. It's necessary. They know that protecting their peace isn't arrogance. It's wisdom, and they understand something many people never learn. Boundaries are not walls. They are filters. Walls keep everyone out. Filters simply allow the right people in. Healthy boundaries don't exist to punish others. They exist to protect what matters most. Your energy, your purpose, your future. Without boundaries, your life becomes overcrowded, not with meaningful relationships, but with endless obligations. People who appreciate your usefulness, but never your humanity. People who celebrate what you do for them, while ignoring who you are. People who expect unlimited access to your time simply because you've always said yes. But access is a privilege, not a right. Not everyone deserves unlimited access to your mind. Not everyone deserves your emotional energy. Not everyone deserves your kindness. Not everyone deserves your heart. The people who truly value you will never demand that you sacrifice yourself to prove your love. They will respect your boundaries because they respect you. The ones who become angry the moment you create healthy limits often reveal exactly why those limits were necessary in the first place. Remember this: your time is precious. Your peace is priceless. Your presence is valuable. So stop asking who wants access to your life, and start asking who has earned the privilege of being part of it. Because the quality of your future will always be determined by the people you repeatedly choose to let walk beside you. Chapter 5. The power of walking away. Walking away feels painful. It almost always does. Your heart resists it. Your mind questions it. Part of you wonders if you're making a mistake. Part of you keeps searching for one final reason to stay. But the pain isn't always a sign that you're choosing the wrong path. More often, it's a sign that you're letting go of something you deeply wanted to be true. You're grieving potential, not the relationship that actually existed, but the relationship you believed could exist. You're grieving the future you imagined together, the conversations you hoped would eventually happen, the apology you kept waiting to hear, the respect you believed they would one day show, the friendship you were convinced would last forever, the version of them you carried in your mind, even when their actions kept telling a different story. That is what makes letting go so difficult. You're not only releasing a person, you're releasing an entire future that never became reality. But potential is not reality. Hope is not evidence. Good intentions are not consistent actions. Promises are not commitment. Words are easy. Patterns are expensive. Anyone can promise to change. Anyone can apologize. Anyone can make beautiful speeches about loyalty, love, or friendship. But character is not revealed by what people say. It is revealed by what they repeatedly do. People reveal themselves through patterns, not words. Patterns never lie. If someone consistently shows up for you, believe the pattern. If someone repeatedly disappears when life becomes inconvenient, believe the pattern. If someone continually makes you question your worth, believe the pattern. Actions speak quietly, but they tell the truth with remarkable consistency. And once you truly accept this, life becomes much simpler. Not easier, but clearer. You stop forcing conversations that only one person wants to have. You stop carrying relationships that require you to do all the emotional work. You stop writing long explanations to people who have already decided not to understand you. You stop proving your value to those determined to overlook it. You stop chasing people who repeatedly choose distance over connection.
Because eventually, you realize something incredibly freeing. The right people never require endless persuasion. They don't need to be convinced to appreciate your presence. They don't make you compete for basic respect. They don't leave you wondering where you stand every single day. Instead, you quietly choose peace. Not because you've stopped caring, but because you finally started caring about yourself. You discover that peace is more valuable than constant uncertainty, that self-respect is worth more than temporary approval, that protecting your energy creates space for people who genuinely deserve it. There is incredible strength in silence. Not every disappointment deserves a response. Not every betrayal deserves an argument. Not every goodbye requires an explanation. Sometimes your silence says everything words never could. Sometimes the loudest statement you can make is your absence. Your decision to stop chasing, to stop begging, to stop explaining, to stop returning to places where your presence has never truly been appreciated. Because your absence reveals something your presence never could. It shows who notices. It shows who reaches out. It shows who genuinely values having you in their life. And perhaps the greatest lesson of all is this: people who truly value you never need to be convinced to keep you in their lives. They choose you willingly, consistently, without manipulation, without games, without making you earn the respect that should have been there from the beginning. So when the time comes to walk away, don't see it as giving up. See it as making room. Room for peace. Room for growth. Room for people who recognize your worth without needing to be reminded. Because every step away from what continually drains you is a step closer to the life and the people you were always meant to find. Chapter 6. Build a life that attracts, not chases. Imagine if every ounce of energy you've spent trying to fix difficult people was redirected toward the one person who can truly transform your life. Yourself. Imagine taking all the emotional effort you've invested in convincing others to value you, understand you, or stay with you, and using that same energy to build a stronger, wiser, and more fulfilled version of who you are. Imagine what would happen if, instead of chasing acceptance, you started chasing growth, learning new skills that expand your opportunities and reshape your future.
Reading books that challenge the way you think and introduce you to ideas that change your perspective forever. Improving your physical health until your body becomes a reflection of the discipline you've developed within. Strengthening your mind through daily habits that make you calmer, wiser, and more resilient than you were yesterday. Building meaningful friendships with people who celebrate your victories instead of competing with them. Creating something valuable that leaves a lasting impact, whether it's a business, a passion project, a work of art, or simply a life you're genuinely proud of. Traveling to places that remind you how much of the world still remains unexplored. Stepping outside your comfort zone often enough that fear slowly loses its power over you. Growing into someone your younger self would admire. Healing from the wounds you once believed would define you forever. Becoming stronger not because life became easier, but because you chose to become greater than your circumstances. Now imagine becoming so deeply committed to your own purpose, so completely absorbed in building the life you deserve, that you simply no longer have the time, the energy, or the desire to chase people who constantly make you question your value. You stop checking whether they've replied. You stop wondering if you're enough. You stop rewriting your personality just to earn someone's attention. You stop negotiating your self-respect in exchange for temporary affection. Because your life has become too meaningful to be interrupted by people who only appear when it's convenient for them. That is freedom. Not because everyone suddenly understands your worth. Not because every relationship magically becomes healthy. And not because rejection disappears from your life. But because your happiness is no longer controlled by someone else's opinion. Your peace is no longer something other people can give or take away. It becomes something you carry within yourself. Your confidence is no longer borrowed from compliments. It is earned through promises you've kept to yourself. Through difficult mornings you conquered. Through challenges you refused to run from. Through the quiet victories that no one else ever saw. Your identity becomes rooted in purpose, instead of validation, in progress, instead of perfection, in character, instead of popularity. And when that transformation finally happens, something remarkable begins to change. The right people naturally begin entering your life. Not because you became someone different, but because you finally became yourself. You no longer attract people by desperately seeking approval. You attract them through authenticity, through confidence, through peace, through the quiet certainty of someone who knows exactly who they are. You stop accepting less than you deserve because loneliness no longer frightens you. You stop settling for relationships that drain you because you've discovered that protecting your peace is more valuable than pleasing everyone around you. And that is the greatest shift of all. The moment you stop chasing people, you finally create a life worth being found in. At the end of your life, you will not look back wishing you had spent more time chasing people who were already walking away. You will not regret the conversations you never forced. You will not regret the relationships that ended because they could no longer grow. What you may regret is every year you abandoned yourself trying to keep someone else from leaving. Every dream you postponed because you were waiting for another person's approval. Every opportunity you ignored because you were too busy carrying relationships that had already stopped carrying you. Every piece of your confidence you traded away in exchange for acceptance that was never freely given. Life has a way of making these moments feel small while you're living them. One more message, one more apology, one more chance, one more sacrifice. It never feels like you're giving away years. It feels like you're giving away just one more day, until those days quietly become months. Those months become years, and those years become a life you barely recognize. Remember this. You are not responsible for making everyone understand your value. You are not responsible for convincing people to respect you. You are not responsible for proving your kindness, your loyalty, your intentions, or your worth to those who have already decided not to see them. That battle has no finish line, because people who refuse to recognize your value are rarely waiting for better evidence. They're simply looking through a different lens. Your responsibility is far simpler. Protect your value. Protect your peace. Protect your time. Protect the future version of yourself that depends on the decisions you make today. Some doors are meant to close. Not every ending is a tragedy. Sometimes an ending is protection. Sometimes it is growth. Sometimes it is life creating space for something better than you could have imagined. Some conversations are meant to end. Not every misunderstanding deserves another explanation. Not every silence needs to be broken. Not every goodbye needs to be reversed. Some people are meant to become memories. Not because you hate them. Not because they are evil. Not because everything you shared was meaningless. But because your future deserves room to grow. And growth requires space. You cannot fill your life with new opportunities while clinging to everything that no longer belongs in it. You cannot welcome healthier relationships while refusing to release unhealthy ones. You cannot become the person you're capable of becoming if you're constantly shrinking yourself to fit into places you've already outgrown. Your time is limited. Every sunrise is one you will never experience again. Every hour is a piece of your life that can never be reclaimed. Spend it carefully. Your energy is sacred. It shapes your thoughts. It fuels your dreams. It determines what you create, what you build, and who you become. Do not hand it away carelessly. And your life is far too valuable, far too extraordinary, far too brief to spend proving your worth to people who already decided not to see it. Instead, choose yourself. Choose your peace over unnecessary conflict. Choose your purpose over constant distraction. Choose relationships built on mutual respect instead of endless pursuit. Choose people who celebrate your presence instead of merely tolerating it. Not out of arrogance. Not because you believe you're better than anyone else, but out of wisdom. Because wisdom understands that self-respect is not selfish. It is the foundation upon which every healthy relationship is built. The people who truly belong in your life will never require you to betray yourself just to keep them. They won't ask you to shrink your dreams. They won't demand unlimited access to your time while offering nothing in return. They will value your presence because they value you. So let today be the day you stop chasing. The day you stop explaining. The day you stop begging for space in rooms where your absence would barely be noticed. And let it also be the day you begin investing your time where it is returned with respect, where your kindness is appreciated, where your loyalty is matched, where your heart feels at home. Because the moment you stop wasting your life on people who don't deserve you is the moment you finally reclaim the one thing that has always belonged to you, your future. And that is the moment your real life truly begins. If this message changed the way you see your relationships, don't let it end here. Subscribe to the Cipher Phantom for more videos that challenge your thinking, sharpen your mind, and help you reclaim control over your life. Leave a comment below with one word. Enough. Because sometimes, one decision is all it takes to stop chasing what drains you and start building the life you truly deserve. Until next time, protect your time, protect your peace, and remain unseen until your success becomes impossible to ignore.